let's move on then to our second speaker, who is Dame Rosalind Marsden, one of the FIGS trustees, so responsible for fundraising and providing support from the UK. Rosalind has a very distinguished career as a British ambassador in Sudan and also EU Special Envoy for both Sudan and South Sudan. She's also spent time in both in the diplomatic service as an ambassador and consul general in both Afghanistan and Iraq. So I guess if anybody understands something about conflicted societies and how to build peace, hopefully it's Rosalind. So we look forward to hearing from you, Rosalind.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Jean, for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's a real honour to be taking part in this webinar today. It's such distinguished company. And as Jean mentioned, I've been a friend of South Sudan for many years previously in a diplomatic capacity, but I'm speaking today in my capacity as a trustee of the Friends of Ibba Girls' School, regarded as one of the toughest places in the world for girls to get a really good education. And it's also hard for boys as well. And this is despite a strong commitment from ministers and state ministers responsible for education and other dedicated individuals such as undersecretaries, academics, teachers, church leaders, parents, and of course pioneers like Bridget, who all appreciate the role that education and girls' education in particular can play in promoting peace and development in South Sudan, partly rooted in the history of South Sudan, chronic lack of investment in education going back to colonial times. Under the closed district policy, which was introduced by the British in Sudan in 1922, Southern Sudan was administered separately from the north, and formal education was largely left to schools set up by Christian missionaries who divided up the country on geographical lines, with Anglicans, Catholics, Presbyterians, and so on, focusing on different areas. After Sudan's independence in 1956, the military regime of General Aboud then Southern Sudan was, of course, embroiled in a long-running civil war, which, with the exception of the decade from 1972 until 1982, lasted until the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was reached in 2005. And what became Africa's longest-running civil war left millions dead and internally displaced, or as refugees in neighbouring countries. And this meant that several generations of Southern Sudanese spent their youth in the bush and never had the opportunity of an education. There were some exceptions to this, including those who gained some basic education in the refugees, later gained scholarships from organisations like the Wendell Trust to study abroad, and hundreds of Wendell alumni are now in senior positions in South Sudan. There was also a group of orphans called the Lost Boys who were taken from refugee camps in Kenya and Ethiopia to start a new life through resettlement in the United States. And some of those who benefited from higher education in the US are now helping to rebuild South Sudan. But it's often forgotten that there were also many orphan lost girls as well in the refugee camps, but very few of them got the same opportunity to be educated in the US. It's not surprising that today South Sudan has some nations literate. 6% of women can read. Enrollment in the last few years. Half of all primary school age children, more than 1 million, were not in school in the period before the start of the COVID pandemic. And of course, many more have been out of school for the last year. Dropout rates are high, so that completion rates in primary schools are one of the lowest in the world. And dropout rates are particularly high among girls. It's very unusual for girls to complete primary school, and very few make the transition to secondary school. This is partly due to social norms and traditions in what is still quite a patriarchal society, where girls are obliged to take on numerous domestic responsibilities, leaving them less time to study than their brothers, and where girls are often forced into early marriage because of the use of bride price, and girls are particularly vulnerable to early forced marriage in times of increased poverty. Sudan are underfunding and the severe shortage of trained teachers, which is another reason why relatively few children manage to go on to secondary school. So more support for teacher training and continued professional development is a high priority, as are higher salaries for teachers commensurate with the importance of their profession. While the Constitution of South Sudan stipulates that at least 10% of the national budget should be allocated to education, since independence in 2011, the highest it has reached is 5%. And not even this has always been made available in practice. Since the renewal of conflict in 2013, investment in education has further declined, undoing some of the gains made in previous years and exacerbating problems of poor infrastructure. Many school buildings have been destroyed, damaged, or taken over by armed groups, and hundreds of thousands of children have been forced out of school. Renewed conflict has also increased migration to the larger towns and cities like Juba, where schools are deemed to be safer, but this has also led to overcrowding and a higher pupil to teacher ratio, impacting on the quality of learning. Following the revitalized peace agreement of 2018, the security situation in South Sudan has improved in some parts of the country, but in other areas, localized conflicts, clashes with non-signatories, intercommunal violence and banditry continue. Ibba Girls Boarding School has been very fortunate in being able to continue to operate without interruption since its foundation in 2014, with the exception, of course, of the countrywide school closures since March last year because of COVID. Investment in education is important for both boys and girls, as education is a basic human right, and it's key to promoting long-term peace and development. Many South Sudanese parents value education, but they don't always feel that the education available in South Sudan is of the quality they want. Some wealthier parents choose to send their children to private schools in Kenya or Uganda, but of course this option is not available to the majority. A lot of refugees remain outside the country in order to access education. So improving schools in South Sudan will also increase the number of returnees and reduce the brain drain. If reliance on guns, cattle raiding and recruitment into tribal militias is to be reduced, boys need to have alternative livelihoods, alternative livelihood opportunities and vocational training. But girls' education is an equally high priority because girls and women in South Sudan continue to suffer from lack of economic opportunity, inadequate health care, unequal access to education, early marriage, sexual violence and discrimination. The British government's flagship Girls' Education in South Sudan programme is designed to raise awareness of the benefits of sending girls to school, to encourage parents to let their daughters stay the course and not drop out early, and to support schools to improve their buildings, facilities and teaching materials. Educating girls brings with it a multitude of benefits, not just for the individual, but for society and the economy at large. In terms of development, these include reducing child and maternal mortality, malnutrition, teenage pregnancy, early marriage, and promoting economic growth by expanding the educated workforce and the pool of female entrepreneurial talent, which is so badly needed to develop South Sudan's private sector. Educating girls contributes to developing well-rounded, self-confident individuals who can make informed decisions, stand up for their rights, resist political manipulation, gain the skills needed to earn a much better living, and of course play an active role in their communities. At Ibba, students receive a high-quality academic education, which will prepare them for going on to university if they wish to do so. Greater access to tertiary education for girls is crucial, Girls need to have more role models by seeing more South Sudanese women in leadership roles, like our distinguished panelists today. But Ibba also attaches importance to teaching its students practical life skills, such as growing vegetables on the school farm, which will be of use in their daily lives in their local communities. Educating girls often has a greater multiplier effect, in fact, than educating boys. Many of the students at Ibba say that when they go home for the holidays, they spend time teaching their siblings how to read and write and passing on some of their knowledge to their mothers, for example, about healthcare and nutrition. So when a girl is educated, she will in turn make sure that all her children, girls as well as boys, go to school. Educated girls can be the architects of creating peaceful societies. Education fosters cooperation and understanding between people from different beliefs, ethnicities, and tribal backgrounds, and it can help to break the cycle of conflict by providing people with the skills they need to resolve their differences peacefully. The crucial role that women can play in peace building and peace mediation was recognized 20 years ago by the UN Security Council when it adopted Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. And I'm sure we will hear from Pierre Philip what South Sudan is doing to put this into practice. One very positive development is that peace education has now been incorporated into the new South Sudan national curriculum, which started to be phased in during 2019 and is hoped to be fully introduced in 2021. The curriculum framework is based on shared commitment to the values and principles of respect for human rights, gender equality, peace, tolerance and reconciliation, social justice, democracy, and building national pride within the context of global citizenship. The curriculum for peace education in primary schools teaches pupils to understand the rights and needs of others, the importance of respect and tolerance, and how conflicts in their local environment can be mediated and resolved. And at secondary level, conflict issues are also tackled at national and international level, and students learn how to mediate disputes and come up with agreements acceptable to all parties. At Ibba, the school puts peace education into practice in a number of ways. For example, every Friday, the students take part in debates in front of the whole school on a range of topical and controversial issues which they choose and research themselves. The students form two debating teams and they adjudicate the results. So through these debates, they learn how to make an informed contribution to discussion, how to take account of diverse viewpoints, and how to develop the capacity for critical thinking and to challenge assumptions. The students also learn how to play an active part in democratic and electoral processes. For example, the school holds annual elections to choose the head girl, the school prefects, and the class representatives. These elections are taken very seriously, with the candidates making passionate speeches in their election addresses. There's a secret ballot, a formal count, and announcement of the results. All this aims to develop a real understanding of democratic culture, free speech, and human rights. So in conclusion, I would say that the students at Ibba are clearly very fortunate to receive a high quality education, which is sadly not yet available to most of their contemporaries in South Sudan. Ibba is not a private school for the privileged children of wealthy families. It's a community school which takes children from across Western Equatoria State, including disadvantaged girls from localities where there are no secondary schools. Although obviously there are limits to the numbers that Ibba can take, and many more schools are needed in Western Equatoria, which can provide quality education for the many girls who have the potential to do well. There are 280 girls at Ibba now, and the most senior cohort is about to start in the second class at secondary level. When they graduate, they will significantly increase the number of girls nationwide who have completed secondary education and who have the potential to become leaders in their community or even at state and national level, and to become powerful advocates and role models for girls' education. With your continued support, Ibba Girls Boarding School can become a beacon school that can spread best practice, along with a limited number of other schools across the country that already offer, that also offer high quality education. This is a valuable and tangible contribution at the micro level, but of course, large scale international assistance from donor countries, UN agencies, and international NGOs will continue to be vitally important, as will much faster implementation of the revitalized Sudan peace agreement and fulfillment of the 35% quota for women in all governance structures. If our dream for good quality education for all in South Sudan is to be realized, education cannot wait, because it is the key to long-term peace, development, and nation building. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rosalind. That's a really masterful overview, I think, and some really important issues raised there.